Imagine this. It's late at night. The house is quiet, too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you notice every creak in the floorboards, every faint hum of the refrigerator, every whisper of wind brushing against your window. You're lying in bed, earbuds in, the world outside cloaked in darkness, and here you are, willingly pressing play on a podcast that promises to guide you straight into the heart of America's most haunted places. Now, you could have chosen something else, a comedy podcast, a true crime show, maybe some relaxing rain sounds to help you drift into sleep. But instead, you've chosen me. You've chosen this voice right now to lead you into the shadows, into the corners of America where history refuses to rest, where whispers from the past bleed into the present, where every shadow seems a little too alive. And tonight, we're not just telling ghost stories. We're exploring why these places continue to haunt us, whether you believe in spirits or not. Because every legend, every creaking hallway, every whispered tale has something to say about the people who told it. Ghost stories are never just about ghosts. They're about us, our fears, our regrets, our fascination with the unknown. So, welcome to Top Haunted Places in America. Over the next few hours, we'll wander together through some of the country's most famous and infamous haunted sites. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, where a hotel inspired one of the most chilling novels ever written, to the fog-wrapped island of Alcatraz, once called the Rock, where prisoners lived and died in isolation. We'll visit Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where stars of the silver screen rest under the glow of the California moon. Their stories, too glamorous or too tragic to fade quietly into history. And as we drift from one haunted place to another, I'll ask you to do just one thing. Keep an open mind, because whether you're a skeptic who believes every ghost story is just a trick of the imagination, or a believer who swears they've seen something move in the corner of their room, these places have power. Not because they're full of spirits, but because they remind us of what it means to be human, to fear, to remember, to hope that maybe, just maybe, there's something waiting for us beyond this life. Let's begin our journey with a place where silence is as terrifying as any scream. High in the Rocky Mountains, nestled among whispering pines and snow-capped peaks, sits a grand white hotel. At first glance, the Stanley Hotel looks like something out of a postcard. Majestic, almost too perfect. Its long veranda stretching across the front like open arms. But anyone who's ever stayed there knows the truth. This isn't just a hotel. It's a doorway. The Stanley is perhaps most famous for inspiring Stephen King's The Shining. And if you've ever read the book or seen the movie, you already know what that means. Isolation, madness, rooms that seem to breathe when you're not looking. But here's the thing. The Stanley's reputation for being haunted existed long before King checked in one snowy night in the 1970s. Guests report hearing children laughing in the hallways when no children are staying at the hotel. Pianos play themselves in the dead of night. Doors open and close as if guided by invisible hands. And perhaps most unsettling of all, the very room where King himself stayed has become legendary for unexplained activity. But here's what makes the Stanley fascinating. It's not just the ghost stories. It's what those stories represent. A hotel, after all, is a temporary home, a place of transition. People come and go, leaving pieces of themselves behind. Their laughter, their arguments, their loneliness, their secrets. The Stanley has seen over a century of comings and goings. Maybe it's no surprise that some guests have chosen never to leave. And so, when you stand in those long, carpeted hallways, lit by flickering chandeliers, you can feel it. The weight of memory pressing down. You realize that haunted places aren't about death. They're about the persistence of life. Before we continue, let me ask you this. Have you ever felt watched in a place where no one was there? Have you ever stepped into a room and immediately felt that something was off? That sensation, that prickling at the back of your neck, is why people keep returning to places like the Stanley Hotel. Not because they expect to see a ghost standing at the end of the hall, but because deep down, they want to feel that shiver. They want to stand on the threshold of the unknown. And tonight, you and I are going to feel that shiver together. But the Stanley is only the beginning. Because once you check out of this hotel, you're heading west into the cold, salty air of San Francisco Bay, toward a rock that was once called inescapable, a prison that held some of the most dangerous men in America, and a place where silence itself may be the loudest sound of all. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture the San Francisco skyline, the rolling fog, the golden arches of the Bay Bridge, the twinkle of city lights against the water. It's beautiful, isn't it? Almost comforting. But then shift your gaze to the middle of the bay. There, rising from the cold, choppy waters, is a jagged island crowned with gray stone walls and rusting guard towers. That island has a name you already know: Alcatraz. For decades, the Rock was considered the most secure prison in America. Its very location, surrounded by icy currents, relentless winds, and shark-filled waters, was meant to make escape impossible. This was where the government sent the prisoners it couldn't control anywhere else. Mob bosses, escape artists, murderers, legends of crime like Al Capone. But here's the thing: you don't lock up hundreds of men in isolation, surround them with despair, and expect the walls to stay silent. The echoes of Alcatraz linger, and some say they've never left. Visitors today, because yes, the prison is now a tourist site, often report strange experiences. Cold spots where the air drops suddenly, as if something invisible just brushed past. The clanging of iron doors echoing in empty cell blocks. Whispers in the dark that seem to rise from the very stone itself. Guides tell stories of visitors fainting in D Block, the solitary confinement wing, overwhelmed by what they describe as a crushing sense of dread. It's unsettling enough to hear these accounts. But let's pause for a moment and think about why prisons, by design, are places of extreme emotion, anger, regret, violence, desperation, all contained within a few acres of concrete and steel. Imagine the psychic weight of thousands of lives compressed into that space over decades. If haunted places are created by energy, by the intensity of human experience, then Alcatraz is a perfect storm. But there's another layer here too. The way we as a culture mythologize prisons. They become symbols, not just of punishment, but of fear itself. When you step into a place like Alcatraz, you're not just walking through a historic site. You're stepping into a story you already know. A story of men trapped, punished, silenced. And deep down, part of you wonders, what would it feel like if it were me? That's why ghost stories thrive here. Not necessarily because the prison is full of restless spirits, but because the human imagination fills every crack in the concrete with shadows. Take D Block, for example. This was solitary confinement. Imagine being locked in a small, windowless cell, the steel door shutting with a metallic thud that reverberates in your chest. Days blur into weeks. Time loses meaning. In the silence, the mind starts to play tricks. Even without ghosts, men reported hearing footsteps, whispers, the rattling of chains, hallucinations born of isolation, or something else. And when visitors today walk into those same cells, some say the air feels heavy, almost suffocating. A rational explanation is easy enough. The brain, primed by stories of suffering, reacts with fear. But what if the fear is more than psychological? What if the walls themselves? Remember, it's tempting to dismiss ghost stories as fantasy. But think about it. Why do we keep telling them? Because they give shape to things we can't explain. The eerie silence of Alcatraz becomes a whisper. The chill of damp stone becomes a phantom's touch. The human mind refuses to accept emptiness, so it fills the void with presence. And yet, when you stand on Alcatraz at night, with the city lights twinkling across the water, you realize something profound. The prison is haunted, yes, but maybe not by spirits. Maybe it's haunted by history, by the lives that passed through it, by the reminder that punishment and suffering leave marks, not just on people, but on places. That's what makes Alcatraz so powerful, even decades after its final prisoner left. It's not just a relic of crime and punishment. It's a mirror, a place where we confront the darker parts of ourselves, the parts we'd rather keep locked away. So, as the ferry carries you back to the safety of the mainland and the island fades into the fog, you can't help but wonder, was it only your imagination that made the hair on your arms rise? Or was something watching from the shadows of cell 14D? We've wandered through the eerie halls of a hotel and the silent cells of a prison. Two very different places, and yet both share a truth. Haunted locations aren't just about what happened there. They're about what we bring with us when we enter. Our fears, our expectations, our longing for the unknown. But our journey doesn't stop here, because now we're heading south, out of the foggy bay, down the California coast, into a place where beauty and death are intertwined. A cemetery unlike any other, where the stars of Hollywood still shine long after their final curtain call. The sun sets differently in Los Angeles. It doesn't just sink. It lingers, painting the sky in streaks of pink and orange, almost as if the day refuses to let go. And as the last light fades, the palm trees turn into black silhouettes, swaying gently against the twilight. It's beautiful, yes, but in the heart of the city, beneath that painted sky, lies a place where beauty and death have learned to coexist. This is Hollywood Forever Cemetery. From the outside, it looks almost like a park. Lush green lawns, ponds reflecting the California sky, marble mausoleums glowing in the sunlight. People come here not just to mourn, but to celebrate. Movie nights are held on the grass. Concerts echo between the tombs. Festivals light up the space with laughter and music. It's a place where life refuses to stop, even in the presence of death. But don't be fooled by the celebrations. Beneath the glamour, this cemetery carries whispers. Whispers of dreams that burned too brightly, of lives cut short, of stars who never truly left the stage. You see, Hollywood Forever is home to some of the most famous names in American film history. Silent film legends like Rudolph Valentino, Golden Age stars like Judy Garland, musicians, directors, producers, artists whose stories shaped the way we see the world. And if you believe the tales, some of them still linger here, unwilling to leave the spotlight. Let's start with Rudolph Valentino, often called the Latin lover. He was the silent film star who captured the hearts of millions in the 1920s. His face splashed across posters, his presence magnetic. But his sudden death at just 31 shocked the world. Fans fainted at the news. Thousands crowded the streets during his funeral. And even now, a century later, visitors say his spirit hasn't fully faded. There's a legend of a woman dressed in black, known as the Lady in Black, who visits Valentino's grave every year. Sometimes, people say, they see her kneeling there, even when no one was supposed to be in the cemetery. Others claim to have seen Valentino himself, a fleeting figure at the corner of their vision, a shadow walking gracefully among the tombs, as if still searching for an audience. But it's not just Valentino. The cemetery is full of stories. Judy Garland, forever remembered as Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, rests here. Some visitors claim they hear faint music, soft notes, like a lullaby, when passing by her mausoleum. Is it imagination, a trick of memory, or something more? And then there are the lesser-known graves. Musicians whose voices once filled the airwaves, now silent. Producers whose names rolled across the credits, now etched in stone. Together, they create a chorus of presence, a reminder that Hollywood has always been a place where dreams and ghosts walk hand in hand. But here's where Hollywood Forever becomes especially fascinating. It isn't just about who is buried here, but about how the living continue to interact with the dead. Unlike other cemeteries that remain solemn, this one thrives with life. People spread blankets on the grass to watch classic films projected against a mausoleum wall. Concerts draw crowds who dance among the graves. On Dia de los Muertos, the Day of the Dead, families set up altars filled with flowers, candles, and photographs, inviting the spirits of loved ones to join the celebration. To some, this might feel disrespectful, but in reality, it's deeply human. Because death doesn't erase connection. It doesn't silence stories. If anything, Hollywood Forever shows us that memory can be vibrant, that the line between the living and the dead is softer than we think. Of course, that softness is exactly what makes the place feel haunted. When you sit on the lawn, watching an old movie under the stars, surrounded by the very actors who once lived those stories, it's easy to imagine they're still with you. That maybe Valentino is leaning against a tree in the shadows. That Judy Garland is humming along to her own song. And maybe that's why people love this cemetery so much. It allows them to feel close to the legends they adored. Ghost stories here aren't about fear. They're about connection. But let's look deeper. Why do we want to believe that our idols linger after death? Why do we find comfort in the idea that their spirits walk the same grounds we do? Perhaps it's because Hollywood, more than any other place, thrives on illusion. It's a city built on stories, on the magic of film, on the ability to turn light and shadow into emotion. So of course, in its cemetery, the stories don't stop. Of course, the illusions continue. Whether or not Valentino's ghost walks the paths, whether or not Judy Garland's voice carries on the wind, one truth is certain. Hollywood Forever keeps their presence alive. Not just in stone, but in memory. in celebration, in the way the living refuse to let them go. So when the night deepens and the crowd disperses and the gates of the cemetery close, you're left with a lingering feeling that you were not just in a cemetery. You were in the middle of a story still being written, and as you walk back into the neon glow of Los Angeles, you carry with you that strange mixture of wonder and unease. Because if the dead can linger here among the stars, who's to say they can't linger anywhere? We've now visited 3 of America's most haunted places: the Stanley Hotel, where isolation echoes in the hallways; Alcatraz Prison, where silence presses down like a weight; and Hollywood Forever Cemetery, where glamour refuses to fade into the ground. But our journey isn't finished. Ahead lies a mansion unlike any other, a sprawling labyrinth of staircases that lead nowhere, doors that open into walls, and windows that look out into nothing. A house built not for comfort, but to confuse the spirits that its owner feared were following her. Yes, we're going to the Winchester Mystery House. There are houses, and then there are labyrinths. From the outside, the Winchester Mystery House looks like an extravagant Victorian mansion. Sprawling gardens, wide porches, towers reaching toward the California sky. But step inside, and you realize this isn't just a home. It's a puzzle, a maze built from fear, grief, and perhaps madness. This house has staircases that lead to ceilings, doors that open into walls, windows that look out into hallways instead of sunlight, hallways that twist and turn with no sense of direction, like the home itself is trying to confuse you. And maybe that was the point. The story begins with Sarah Winchester, the widow of William Wirt Winchester, heir to the fortune built by the Winchester rifle. In the late 1800s, Sarah's life was struck by tragedy. Her infant daughter died. Her husband followed, leaving her alone, inconsolable, and unimaginably wealthy. Grief is heavy. It distorts the world. For Sarah, grief became a haunting. Legend says she visited a medium who told her the Winchester family was cursed by the spirits of those killed by the very rifles that built her fortune. And the only way to protect herself was to build, to keep building, to never stop building. Because as long as hammers echoed through the halls, the ghosts could not claim her. And so she built day and night. For nearly 4 decades, carpenters worked on the mansion. Rooms sprouted like branches, hallways extended like veins, staircases climbed toward nowhere. It wasn't construction, it was obsession. The house grew and grew, sprawling across 160 rooms, 7 stories high at its peak. A monument to paranoia carved into wood and plaster. And when you walk its halls today, you feel it, the disorientation, the way your mind fights to make sense of the layout. One moment, you're in a grand ballroom. The next, you're staring at a staircase that drops suddenly into the floor. You turn a corner, and the corridor narrows until you're pressed against the wall, like the house itself is pushing you out. Some visitors say the disorientation isn't just architectural, it's supernatural. Cold drafts sweep through sealed rooms. Doorknobs rattle with no one around. Shadows flicker at the edge of candlelight tours. Guides tell stories of footsteps following them, whispers riding the air, and even the faint sound of hammering. Long after the construction ceased, with Sarah's death in 1922. But here's where things get truly fascinating. The Winchester Mystery House isn't just haunted by spirits. It's haunted by Sarah herself, or at least by the choices she made. Was she really cursed? Or was this house the outward expression of a woman crushed by grief, guilt, and loneliness? Think about it. She lost a child. She lost her husband. She inherited not just money, but the weight of knowing that fortune came from instruments of death. Whether or not ghosts whispered in her ear, Sarah was haunted. Haunted by sorrow, haunted by responsibility. And the house became her exorcism, a never-ending project to keep the past at bay. That's what makes the Winchester Mystery House so compelling. On one level, it's a ghost story. Wandering spirits, creaking floors, a labyrinth designed to confuse the dead. On another level, it's a psychological story. A woman trapped in grief, building walls as a way to survive. And maybe that's why, even today, the house feels alive. Because it wasn't just built for the living, it was built for the dead. Visitors often describe the uncanny sensation of being watched. You can stand in the center of a room, alone, and feel eyes on you from the shadows. Skeptics will say it's the architecture, the odd angles, the way light filters strangely through mismatched windows. But believers will insist it's Sarah, still wandering her endless halls, making sure her labyrinth continues to serve its purpose. And maybe they're both right, because here's the truth. Haunted places are rarely about the supernatural alone. They're about the human need to make meaning out of loss. Sarah Winchester couldn't bring back her family. She couldn't erase the violence tied to her fortune. But she could build. She could create a home so strange, so endless, that it might confuse not only the spirits chasing her, but perhaps, for a time, her grief as well. And so, the house remains, a monument to sorrow, a shrine to fear, a place where the living and the dead blur together in corridors that lead nowhere. When you step outside after the tour, the California sunlight feels almost shocking. Too bright, too simple, after so much complexity. But part of you still carries the weight of the house. The endless rooms, the doors to nowhere, the silence of grief carved into wood. And as night falls over San Jose, you can't help but wonder, did Sarah succeed? Did her mansion confuse the spirits? Or did she trap them within its walls, forever circling the staircases that climb toward nothing? Either way, the house endures. And its story reminds us that the most haunted places are often built not by ghosts, but by people desperately trying to live with them. We've now walked through 4 very different landscapes of haunting: a hotel, a prison, a cemetery, and a house born of grief. Each one tells us something new about fear, memory, and the ways we try to make sense of the unknown. But our journey isn't over yet. Next, we'll travel east, far from California's sunshine, into the cold stone corridors of a prison that redefined punishment in America. A place where silence was not just eerie, but enforced. A place where even the strongest minds unraveled in solitude. Yes, our next stop is Eastern State Penitentiary in Philadelphia. If you've ever walked through the city of Philadelphia, you know it's a place steeped in history. The Liberty Bell, Independence Hall, symbols of freedom and democracy. But just a few blocks away from those monuments of hope stands a building that tells a very different story. A fortress. Its stone walls rise like cliffs, gray and foreboding. Gothic towers loom over the streets. To the casual passerby, it might look like a medieval castle transported into the middle of a modern city. But this isn't a castle. It's a prison. This is Eastern State Penitentiary. When it opened in 1829, it was unlike anything the world had ever seen. At the time, prisons were chaotic places, loud, crowded, violent. Eastern State was built to be the opposite. Silent, orderly, a place not for punishment, but for penitence. That word, penitence, is where the term penitentiary comes from. The idea was simple, almost noble. Solitude and silence would force inmates to reflect, repent, and reform. But in practice, silence became its own form of torture. Prisoners lived alone in small stone cells, each with a single narrow skylight. A God's eye, they called it, meant to remind them that even if no human was watching, heaven was. They ate alone, worked alone, slept alone. Guards covered their heads with hoods when they were moved from place to place, ensuring they never saw another face. Days melted into weeks, weeks into years, with nothing but their own thoughts for company. It doesn't take much imagination to guess what happened next. Many inmates lost their grip on reality. Whispers of madness spread through the stone walls. Some screamed into the silence. Others never spoke again. The very system designed to bring reform seemed instead to break the human spirit. And perhaps that's why Eastern State is now considered one of the most haunted places in America. Visitors today walk through crumbling corridors, their footsteps echoing against peeling paint and rusting iron doors. The air is damp, heavy with the scent of stone and dust. And in that silence, people swear they hear things, whispers, cries, the distant clank of chains dragging across the floor. Guides tell stories of visitors who felt unseen hands brush against them, or who glimpsed shadowy figures darting through cell block doorways. One of the most infamous areas is cell block 12, known for echoing voices and strange apparitions. Another is the guard tower, where people report a dark silhouette pacing back and forth, as if still keeping watch over prisoners long gone. Skeptics, of course, argue it's the power of suggestion. You hear a story of madness, and suddenly every draft feels like a ghostly breath. But there's no denying that the building itself holds a kind of energy. The architecture, the silence, the sheer weight of history, it all presses in on you. Even the strongest skeptic can't help but feel something shift when standing in those empty cells. But let's pause for a moment and think beyond the ghost stories. Why does Eastern State capture our imagination so deeply? Maybe because it reflects a paradox at the heart of human nature. We wanted to reform people, to guide them toward repentance. But instead, we built a machine of isolation that stripped away their humanity. The prison became a mirror, not of redemption, but of our failure to understand the human need for connection. And so, when we hear whispers in the dark, maybe it's not the voices of ghosts. Maybe it's the echo of loneliness, the kind of loneliness that never really leaves a place once it's been soaked into the walls. What's striking about Eastern State today is how it exists in two worlds. By day, it's a historic site, open for tours, field trips, even art installations. Visitors wander through cell blocks under the daylight, learning about history. But by night, especially around Halloween, it transforms into something else entirely. Haunted attractions, ghost hunts, flashlight tours. The building itself seems to shift with the seasons, as if reminding us that history isn't just facts, it's feeling. And that's the real power of Eastern State. It forces us to feel the weight of silence, to feel the fragility of the mind, to feel the presence of those who came before, whether they're truly still there or not. Standing in one of those crumbling cells, you might close your eyes and imagine the life of a prisoner 150 years ago. Alone, with only a Bible, a loaf of bread, and the company of your own thoughts. The walls pressing in, the silence ringing louder than any sound. Could you last a week? A month? A year? It's a chilling thought. And maybe that's why the prison feels haunted. Because when we imagine ourselves in that space, the line between the past and the present blurs. For a moment, the ghosts aren't just theirs, they're ours. So when you step back into the streets of Philadelphia, blinking against the sunlight, you can't help but carry a piece of Eastern State with you. The silence lingers. The shadows follow. And you realize that haunting isn't always about spirits. It's about the echoes of human suffering that never truly fade. We've now explored 5 sites: the Stanley Hotel, Alcatraz, Hollywood Forever, the Winchester House, and Eastern State Penitentiary. Each one reveals a different face of haunting: fear, grief, glamour, isolation, despair. But America's haunted landscape stretches further still. Next, we'll descend into one of the most infamous medical facilities in the country, a place where sickness, death, and whispers of the supernatural mingle in the long, dark hallways. Our next destination, Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Kentucky. When people think of haunted places in America, a few names always rise to the top. The Stanley Hotel, Alcatraz, Eastern State Penitentiary. But ask any seasoned paranormal investigator about the Mount Everest of haunted sites, and chances are they'll whisper one name with both reverence and dread: Waverly Hills Sanatorium. Perched on a hill overlooking Louisville, Kentucky, Waverly Hills looks like something straight out of a Gothic novel. The massive, looming structure, with its long wings stretching out like arms, has become an icon of ghost stories, urban legends, and late-night television specials. But unlike many other haunted sites, Waverly's reputation is rooted in very real, very human suffering. In the early 1900s, tuberculosis, known grimly as the White Plague, swept across the United States. Louisville was hit especially hard due to its swampy climate, which provided a perfect breeding ground for the disease. Entire families were devastated, neighborhoods wiped out. With no antibiotics at the time, doctors had few tools beyond rest cures and experimental procedures. In 1910, Waverly Hills Sanatorium was built to treat victims of tuberculosis. It was meant to be a place of hope, a state-of-the-art facility where patients could breathe clean air, receive fresh sunlight, and recover. But reality soon turned darker. TB was relentless, and for many who walked through those doors, Waverly became less of a hospital and more of a waiting room for death. At its peak, Waverly Hills could hold over 400 patients. Doctors and nurses worked tirelessly, but the disease often won. Thousands are said to have died within those walls. The actual number is debated. Some say 6,000, others claim closer to 10,000. But whatever the number, the air of grief is undeniable. Some of the treatments sound more like nightmares than medicine. Patients were subjected to painful procedures in the desperate hope of saving lives. Collapsing a lung to rest it, removing ribs and muscle tissue to expand the lungs artificially, even inserting balloons inside the chest cavity to force the lungs open. These weren't acts of cruelty. They were the medical knowledge of the time, attempts to fight a disease humanity barely understood. But imagine being a patient, weak from coughing blood, watching your neighbor wheeled away for surgery, and never coming back. One of the most chilling legends of Waverly Hills is the so-called body chute, or death tunnel. When a patient died, staff would secretly move the body down a long, underground passageway to waiting hearses below the hill. The purpose wasn't sinister. It was practical. Doctors didn't want surviving patients to see the endless procession of corpses, which would crush morale. But over time, the tunnel became infamous. To this day, many visitors report hearing footsteps, voices, even screams in the pitch-black corridor where so many final journeys began. Ask any ghost hunter about Waverly Hills, and you'll hear the same names come up again and again. There's room 502, perhaps the most infamous location in the building. The story goes that a nurse took her own life there in the 1920s after becoming pregnant and unmarried. A scandalous situation at the time. Another version claims she contracted tuberculosis herself and couldn't bear the slow death she witnessed daily. Visitors say they've seen her spirit wandering the halls, or felt overwhelming despair inside the room. Some even report hearing whispers, "Get out." Then there's the shadow people. Countless witnesses have seen dark, human-like figures darting across doorways or standing motionless at the end of long corridors. They aren't detailed apparitions, more like silhouettes, darker than the surrounding darkness. Paranormal investigators often describe them as the most unsettling phenomenon at Waverly, because they seem aware, intelligent, and sometimes curious. And of course, the famous boy with the ball. Legend tells of a child spirit who rolls a ball across the floor to entice visitors into play. Many groups have captured unexplained movement of toys left behind for him, as if unseen hands are still desperate for companionship. Skeptics argue that Waverly Hills is simply a breeding ground for suggestibility. The building is massive, abandoned, and decaying. The long hallways, the peeling paint, the smell of mildew. It all primes the brain to expect something terrifying. Our minds, especially in low light, are wired to see faces and figures where none exist. But psychologists also note something deeper. Waverly embodies cultural memory. For Americans, tuberculosis was once a nightmare that ravaged communities. Waverly isn't just haunted by spirits, it's haunted by history. When visitors walk its halls, they're stepping into a collective trauma. Every creak, every shadow feels loaded with meaning. That doesn't explain, however, the recordings. Paranormal teams have captured EVPs, electronic voice phenomena, of voices that seem to respond intelligently to questions. Some are faint whispers, others are chillingly clear. "I'm still here," one recording allegedly said. Believers argue that Waverly is too saturated with death to ever be empty. Skeptics counter that it's all coincidence, misinterpretation, or hoaxes. But both sides agree. The place feels alive in a way no abandoned building should. Today, Waverly Hills is a mecca for ghost hunters. Television shows like Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters have spent nights there, capturing eerie evidence. Every Halloween season, it opens for tours and haunted house attractions, drawing thousands who want to brush against its infamous reputation. And yet, even beyond the ghost stories, there's something sobering about visiting. As you walk those endless corridors, you realize this was once a place of hope. Families sent loved ones here, praying for recovery. Nurses dedicated their lives here, risking their own health to comfort the sick. The building is haunted, yes, but not only by fear. It's haunted by compassion, sacrifice, and human struggle. What makes Waverly Hills such a powerful legend isn't just the possibility of ghosts. It's what those ghosts represent. The fragility of human life, the desperation of fighting an invisible killer, the thin line between hope and despair. In many ways, Waverly is a mirror. When people see a shadow figure in the hallway, are they seeing a ghost? Or the reflection of all the fears we carry about illness, mortality, and being forgotten? When they hear a ball bounce in the dark, is it truly a child spirit? Or the ache of innocence lost to tragedy? We may never know for sure. But perhaps that's why the legend endures. Waverly Hills doesn't just scare us. It reminds us that behind every ghost story is a human story. And those, more than anything, are what refuse to die. And so, as midnight lingers and the air grows colder, Waverly Hills stands as one of the most haunting chapters in America's dark folklore, a place where medicine, death, and mystery are forever intertwined. Picture this: palm trees swaying gently in the California night, the faint glow of Los Angeles neon flickering just beyond tall, wrought iron gates. You step onto perfectly manicured lawns, dotted with ornate tombstones and marble mausoleums, their inscriptions glittering under the moonlight. At first glance, Hollywood Forever Cemetery looks less like a graveyard and more like a glamorous park, peaceful, serene, even inviting. But linger a little longer, and you'll realize that beneath its beauty lies a darker truth. This is a resting place where the dead refuse to be forgotten, and where the legends of Hollywood are said to still walk among us. Hollywood Forever was founded in 1899, making it one of the oldest cemeteries in Los Angeles. Its location, right on Santa Monica Boulevard, placed it at the heart of what would soon become the entertainment capital of the world. By the 1920s, silent film stars, directors, and moguls were choosing Hollywood Forever as their final resting place. Over time, it became less a cemetery and more a pantheon, an eternal stage where the greats of Hollywood remained in the spotlight even after death. The cemetery houses some of the most iconic names in film history. Rudolph Valentino, the Latin lover of silent cinema; Judy Garland, the voice that carried Over the Rainbow; Cecil B. DeMille, the director of biblical epics; and Douglas Fairbanks, one of the first true movie swashbucklers. To visit Hollywood Forever is to walk among legends. But with legends come stories, rumors that some stars never really took their final bow. No ghost story at Hollywood Forever is more famous than that of Rudolph Valentino. In life, Valentino was a heartthrob, adored by millions. His untimely death in 1926, at just 31 years old, sparked hysteria. Women fainted in the streets, fans wept outside funeral parlors, and rumors of curses swirled around his name. At his mausoleum in Hollywood Forever, visitors claim to see a shadowy figure wandering nearby, often dressed in black. Some say it's Valentino himself, still basking in the glow of eternal fame. Others whisper about the mysterious Lady in Black, a veiled woman who began visiting his grave every year after his death, leaving roses in his memory. Over time, multiple women have taken on the role, but many believe the original Lady in Black was a grieving lover, or perhaps a spirit herself, forever mourning her idol. For decades, Judy Garland's remains were interred at a cemetery in New York. But in 2017, Her family had her moved to Hollywood forever, close to the city where she rose to fame. Since then, visitors and staff alike have reported strange happenings near her crypt. Some say they've heard faint singing, soft renditions of "Somewhere Over the Rainbow" floating through the corridors at night. Others claim to feel sudden waves of sadness, like Judy's turbulent life, and struggles with fame still echo in her resting place. Whether you believe it's her ghost or simply the power of suggestion, standing before Judy Garland's grave has left many visitors with goosebumps. Unlike most cemeteries, Hollywood Forever is alive with activity. It regularly hosts concerts, film screenings projected onto the side of mausoleums, and even Dia de los Muertos celebrations that draw thousands. For some, this blending of life and death is beautiful, a way to honor the departed by keeping their memory vibrant. For others, it feels almost eerie, like the dead are watching as the living throw a party in their backyard. And then there are the unexplained incidents. Groundskeepers have reported hearing whispers while working late at night. Tourists swear they've felt unseen hands brush against their arms, or caught glimpses of figures walking between gravestones, only for them to vanish. Cameras malfunction in certain spots, recording strange orbs of light. Skeptics dismiss these as tricks of the eye, electrical glitches, or the power of imagination. But believers argue that a place so steeped in dreams, fame, and tragedy could never be ordinary. From a cultural perspective, Hollywood Forever isn't just haunted because of ghosts. It's haunted because of what it represents. Hollywood has always been a place of extremes. Dazzling success paired with crushing failure. Immortality in film balanced against the fragility of human life. Many of the stars buried here lived lives that burned too brightly, too briefly. Their stories, romance, scandal, addiction, triumph, downfall, are woven into America's cultural memory. When visitors report seeing Valentino's ghost or hearing Judy Garland's voice, they may not be experiencing literal hauntings, but rather the weight of that memory. Psychologists call it collective haunting. When a place is so saturated with meaning that it feels alive. Hollywood Forever is a perfect example. It's less about restless spirits and more about the way we, the living, refuse to let go of our icons. And yet, maybe there's something more. Maybe fame has its own kind of energy, an aura so strong it leaves an imprint, even in death. After all, these stars were larger than life. Who's to say they wouldn't remain larger than death? Imagine walking there on Halloween night. The breeze rustles the palm fronds overhead. The mausoleums loom like cathedrals in the dark. Somewhere, faint music drifts across the lawn from a Dia de los Muertos celebration. You pass Valentino's crypt, half expecting to see a woman in black leaving roses. You pause near Judy Garland's resting place and think you hear a note, a hum, a song you can't quite place. And as you leave, glancing back through the iron gates, the lights of Los Angeles blaze on the horizon. The city of dreams never sleeps, and perhaps neither do its stars. Hollywood Forever Cemetery is a reminder that while fame may fade, memory endures. And sometimes, memory is powerful enough to feel like a haunting of its own. Hollywood Forever is unlike any other cemetery in the United States. Sure, it holds the dead, but it also holds the stories that America refuses to stop telling. In many ways, this cemetery is not just about those who are buried here, but about us, the living, the dreamers, the fans who still cling to the magic of Hollywood long after the cameras stopped rolling. Anthropologists often say that cemeteries reveal as much about the living as they do about the dead. The way we bury, honor, and remember people reflects our deepest cultural values. In colonial New England, gravestones bore grim skulls and crossbones, a reminder of life's brevity. In Victorian times, cemeteries became lush gardens, emphasizing beauty and serenity. Hollywood Forever reflects the values of Los Angeles, and by extension, America's love affair with celebrity. Here, graves are not simply markers of death. They're monuments to performance. Stars are buried not in anonymity, but in ways that ensure their legacies shine forever. A walk through Hollywood Forever feels like strolling through a gallery of eternal publicity, where even in death, the spotlight never turns off. But here's the haunting part. Many of these stars lived difficult, painful lives beneath the glitter. Fame can magnify both triumph and tragedy. When visitors claim to sense restless spirits at Hollywood Forever, perhaps they're picking up on that tension. The uneasy balance between the glossy image projected to the world and the private struggles hidden behind closed doors. Think about it. Most haunted sites are prisons, battlefields, or asylums, places associated with suffering. Hollywood Forever is different. Why would a cemetery filled with glamorous names be considered haunted? Psychologists argue it's because celebrities occupy a strange place in our imagination. We don't know them personally, yet we feel intimately connected. We've watched them on screen, listened to their voices, laughed, and cried with them. When they die, it feels like we've lost someone close. But unlike a relative or friend, we don't get closure. We don't attend the funeral. We don't see the body. They simply vanish from the screen. That's why their graves and the legends of their ghosts become so powerful. To believe that Valentino still lingers, or that Judy Garland still sings, is to soften the blow of loss. It means they're not truly gone. They're still performing, still present, still part of our world. Ghost stories, in this sense, are an act of resistance against forgetting. What makes this cemetery even more fascinating is how alive it is. On summer nights, hundreds of people gather here for outdoor movie screenings. Imagine watching a classic film while the star of the movie rests just yards away. It's surreal, like time collapsing, like the dead are joining the audience. Every year, Hollywood Forever hosts one of the largest Dia de los Muertos festivals in the country. Families build elaborate altars, musicians perform, and dancers parade through the grounds. It's colorful, vibrant, celebratory. In many cultures, death is something to fear. In this one, it becomes a chance to remember with joy. And perhaps that's why spirits might linger here more willingly. If you had to spend eternity in a cemetery, wouldn't you rather choose one filled with music and laughter than silence and sorrow? Still, this blending of life and death blurs the line in unsettling ways. Some visitors describe feeling watched during these events, as if unseen figures stand among the crowd. Others say their photos capture strange anomalies, streaks of light, mysterious faces, unexplainable shadows. Skeptics chalk it up to lighting tricks and overactive imaginations. But believers? They'll tell you the stars enjoy the parties as much as anyone. Perhaps the truest ghost at Hollywood Forever is not Valentino, not Garland, not DeMille. It's the ghost of legacy, America is obsessed with the idea of leaving a mark, of not being forgotten. Hollywood is the ultimate embodiment of that dream. Immortality through film, music, and art. But legacy comes with a haunting. The pressure to be remembered, to stay relevant, can be crushing. Many buried here struggled with addiction, depression, or scandals born from the glare of fame. In death, they achieved what life often denied them: permanence. Their names carved in stone, their images preserved on film, their stories whispered by generations. Hollywood forever is haunted not only by spirits, but by the weight of ambition, the desperate drive to matter, to shine, to last. Let's take a midnight stroll through the cemetery in our imagination. The marble mausoleums gleam faintly in the moonlight. A light breeze rattles palm fronds overhead. You pass by the Fairbanks Monument, shaped like a grand Greek temple, and you can almost hear the echoes of sword fights and laughter from Hollywood's golden age. You pause at Valentino's crypt, where roses still appear mysteriously, as though the lady in black has just slipped away. In the stillness, you feel that quiet pull, the sense that you are not entirely alone. It's not necessarily frightening. It's wistful, melancholy, even tender. The ghosts of Hollywood forever don't scream or chase. They whisper. They remind us of what it means to be human, to love, to dream, to fail, to hope for something beyond death. In the end, Hollywood Forever Cemetery is more than a haunted site. It's a cultural touchstone, a place where the American fascination with fame, mortality, and memory converge. It's haunted not because of poltergeists or demons, but because it reflects our own inability to let go of the people who shaped our imaginations. Every ghost story here is really a love story, a fan who can't stop visiting, a singer whose voice refuses to fade, a city that keeps throwing parties for its dead. And maybe that's the ultimate lesson of Hollywood Forever. The dead are only truly gone when we stop telling their stories. And in this cemetery, the stories will never stop. So, as the night deepens and the Hollywood skyline glows in the distance, Hollywood Forever reminds us that in the city of dreams, no one really disappears. They linger in whispers, in roses left at a crypt, in songs carried by the wind, and maybe, just maybe, in the shadows that walk beside you when you least expect it. Imagine a ship unlike any other, docked permanently at the Long Beach Harbor in California. Its massive hull stretches over 1,000 feet, gleaming under the moonlight. The Queen Mary isn't just a ship. It's a monument, a floating palace that once carried the elite across the Atlantic. But tonight, it's not luxury that dominates your imagination. It's the sense that somewhere within its steel walls, the past never really left. The Queen Mary first sailed in 1936, hailed as the epitome of elegance and engineering. Its Art Deco interiors were the height of sophistication. Grand dining rooms, ornate staircases, polished teak decks. Celebrities, dignitaries, and royalty walked its corridors. During World War II, it was transformed into a troop ship, carrying thousands of soldiers safely across dangerous waters. But with glamour came tragedy. The ship's history is peppered with mysterious deaths, unexplained accidents, and eerie occurrences. Crew members report hearing phantom footsteps echoing through empty corridors, lights flickering for no reason, and doors that slam shut on their own. Passengers have described sudden chills, the sensation of being touched by invisible hands, and fleeting shadows glimpsed from the corner of the eye. One of the most famous spirits aboard the ship is that of a sailor who died in the engine room. Visitors describe hearing faint hammering and footsteps near the boiler room, even when no one is present. Others report seeing a woman in a flowing white gown drifting through the first-class pool area, her presence described as sorrowful yet serene. Perhaps the most infamous location is the first-class swimming pool. In the 1940s, several passengers reportedly drowned under mysterious circumstances. Since then, guests have recounted cold drafts, whispering voices, and the feeling of being watched while walking past the pool deck. Paranormal investigators claim that electronic devices often fail mysteriously here, and some have captured EVP, electronic voice phenomena, recordings of voices calling out from the water. Another hot spot is room B40, often called the most haunted room on the ship. Guests have reported lights turning on and off, doors locking themselves, and strange figures appearing in photographs. The room has a reputation for both intrigue and fear, attracting thrill seekers during Halloween and paranormal tours. Skeptics argue that the Queen Mary's hauntings are a combination of historical events and psychological suggestion. It's an enormous vessel with long corridors, dimly lit stairwells, and echoing decks. The perfect setting for the imagination to conjure something supernatural. Yet, there's something undeniably compelling about the Queen Mary. Ships are, by nature, liminal spaces, floating between ports, between land and sea, between past and present. Many of the reported hauntings happen in areas tied to death, labor, or tragedy. The engine room, the pool, crew quarters. It's as if the ship itself remembers the moments of joy, fear, and loss that occurred within its steel frame. Psychologists call this phenomenon residual haunting, where strong emotional events leave a kind of imprint. Whether or not you believe in ghosts, walking through these spaces feels charged with memory and emotion. Visitors report goosebumps, a sense of unease, or the eerie feeling of not being alone, which may be the closest humans can get to experiencing history itself. Why do people love haunted ships so much? The Queen Mary is a microcosm of human experience. Grandeur, fear, ambition, and mortality, all intertwined. Ships symbolize journeys, both literal and metaphorical. A haunted ship reminds us that even in places of beauty and progress, death and mystery are never far behind. In American culture, ghost stories often explore liminality, the threshold between life and death, reality and imagination. The Queen Mary, eternally docked, yet never truly at rest, embodies that concept perfectly. The ship doesn't just haunt the living. It challenges us to confront the ephemeral nature of life and the persistence of memory. Today, the Queen Mary is a museum and hotel. Visitors can take ghost tours, explore the engine rooms, and stay overnight in rooms. Decades of legend attached. The combination of luxury and terror creates a unique experience. The living walk among the echoes of the past, blending curiosity with a subtle, creeping fear. Halloween on the Queen Mary is legendary. The ship hosts special tours, haunted mazes, and storytelling events, drawing thrill seekers from all over the country. Yet even outside the festive season, many guests report inexplicable experiences. Doors opening and closing, lights flickering, and the soft sound of footsteps in empty halls. The hauntings of the Queen Mary are fascinating not just because of the spirits themselves, but because they reflect larger cultural ideas. Ships are metaphors for life's journey, and the ghosts are symbols of memory, mortality, and unfinished business. The Queen Mary asks us to consider our own mortality, our desire to leave a legacy, and our fascination with the unknown. Visitors, whether believers or skeptics, leave with a lingering sense that the ship is alive in some way. Perhaps it's a reminder that history never truly disappears. Perhaps it's a call to reflect on the countless lives touched by this vessel. Sailors, passengers, workers, and entertainers alike. Picture it. The harbor is still, the water reflecting the glow of the city lights. You stand on the deck, the wind rustling against the steel hull, and for a moment, you feel a connection, not just to the ship, but to the past. The Queen Mary whispers its stories through creaking timbers, cold drafts, and shadows dancing just beyond your vision. It's a haunting that isn't meant to terrify. It's meant to remind you that some memories, some lives, refuse to fade. And as you step off the gangway, leaving the ship behind, you carry a sense of reverence, a shiver of awe, and perhaps a secret hope that one day you might glimpse its mysteries once more. The Queen Mary teaches us that haunting is not always about fear. It's about memory, history, and the stories that refuse to die. In the liminal spaces between past and present, we find the echoes of countless lives still waiting to be remembered. Imagine walking down a cobblestone street, lined with centuries-old oak trees draped in Spanish moss, their gnarled branches casting long, eerie shadows in the moonlight. Gas lamps flicker softly, illuminating historic homes, wrought iron balconies, and quiet squares where time feels almost frozen. This is Savannah, Georgia, a city where the past isn't just remembered, it lingers, and sometimes it walks beside you. Savannah is one of the oldest cities in the American South, founded in 1733 by General James Oglethorpe. Its history is rich, layered, and often tragic. From colonial struggles and Revolutionary War battles to the Civil War, yellow fever epidemics, and the complexities of the antebellum South, Savannah's streets are soaked in stories of both triumph and tragedy. It's no surprise that Savannah is widely regarded as America's most haunted city. With over 100 historic locations reported to have paranormal activity, walking here at night can feel like stepping through a portal to another era. The city's architecture, Victorian homes, historic churches, and cobblestone alleys creates the perfect stage for ghostly encounters. One of the most infamous sites is the Mercer Williams House, made famous by the book Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. The house is said to host multiple spirits, including a servant who died under mysterious circumstances. Visitors report flickering lights, disembodied voices, and sudden temperature drops. Then there's the Sorrel Weed House, known as one of Savannah's scariest residences. Legends tell of murders, suicides, and tragic deaths that occurred within its walls. Guests and ghost hunters claim to see apparitions, hear footsteps on empty stairs, and feel invisible hands brushing against them. Some even report the sound of doors slamming violently when no one is near. Colonial Park Cemetery is another hot spot. Established in the 1700s, it's the final resting place for countless victims of yellow fever and other tragedies. Visitors say that after dark, shadows move among the gravestones, whispers drift on the wind, and ghostly figures appear near family plots, as though replaying their final moments. Savannah embraces its haunted reputation. Walking tours, ghost hunts, and evening excursions through historic districts are a major attraction, drawing thousands every year, especially during Halloween. Guides share stories of restless spirits, mysterious lights, and shadowy figures. While some guests visit for fun, others report genuinely unexplainable experiences. Cold spots, fleeting visions, and sounds that can't be explained by the city's ambient noise. This embrace of the paranormal is deeply cultural. For Savannah, ghost stories are part of identity. They reflect the city's history, its struggles, and its community's way of processing past tragedies. Ghost tales here aren't just for thrills. They're a form of storytelling, connecting modern visitors to lives that might otherwise be forgotten. Why do people feel haunted in Savannah more than in other cities? Psychologists suggest a combination of history, atmosphere, and suggestion. The city is filled with centuries-old architecture and densely layered stories of death, tragedy, and passion. When visitors walk its streets, the brain is primed to notice anomalies. Every flicker of light, rustle of leaves, or creaking door becomes a candidate for paranormal interpretation beyond psychology. There's the phenomenon of cultural haunting. Savannah's citizens and storytellers have cultivated its ghostly identity for decades. The narrative itself becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because people expect to encounter spirits. Many genuinely believe they do. The city's history, ambiance, and ghost stories work together to create an environment where the line between the past and the present feels almost fluid. Savannah is famous for its 22 public squares, each with its own history and legends. Monterey Square, for example, is home to the Mercer Williams House and is said to be frequented by spirits who wander the nearby park at night. Reynolds Square reportedly hosts ghostly sightings of former residents and soldiers, lingering where history was most vivid. Each square functions as a kind of stage. The trees and lanterns create shadows. The historic buildings provide context, and the stories give meaning. Visitors describe the sensation of being watched, followed, or guided by invisible presences, making Savannah unique among haunted locales. What draws people to Savannah isn't just fear, it's connection. Ghost stories allow visitors to engage with history in a visceral way. They offer a chance to step outside modern life, to confront mortality, and to empathize with lives lived centuries before. Walking Savannah's streets at night, it's easy to feel a bridge between past and present. A reminder that even in death, stories endure. Halloween amplifies this experience. Every October, the city comes alive with festivities, paranormal events, and special tours. Yet even without the seasonal spectacle, the atmosphere of Savannah is inherently haunting. The fog rolling through the squares, the moss-draped oaks, the cobblestones. These aren't just scenic. They're conduits for imagination, memory, and reflection. Picture yourself wandering past Colonial Park Cemetery after dusk. The wind carries faint whispers. The moon illuminates shadows between the tombstones. And every creak in the wooden fence sounds amplified. You pause near an old gravestone, feeling the weight of the past pressing gently against the present. For a moment, you understand why Savannah has earned its reputation. It isn't just haunted by ghosts. It's haunted by memory, by history, by the lives that shaped the city and refuse to fade entirely. And perhaps, in that quiet, moonlit moment, you feel a connection not fear, but awe. The ghosts of Savannah are reminders, not just of mortality, but of the stories that survive long after life ends. Savannah teaches us that haunting is not merely about fear or spectacle. It is about history, memory, and the lingering presence of lives once lived. In the quiet squares and historic streets, the past is always near, whispering its stories to those willing to listen. As the night deepens and the shadows stretch longer, we've traveled across the United States, stepping into spaces where history lingers, stories whisper, and the past refuses to fade. From the eerie corridors of the Stanley Hotel to the cold cells of Alcatraz, the sorrow-laden halls of Eastern State Penitentiary, the tragic echoes of Waverly Hills Sanatorium, the glimmering yet spectral elegance of Hollywood Forever Cemetery, the ghostly decks of the Queen Mary, and the cobblestone streets of Savannah, Georgia. Each location tells a story. Each has a memory embedded in its walls, its soil, or its timbers. A memory that haunts, fascinates, and teaches. What is it about these haunted sites that captures our imagination so profoundly? On the surface, ghosts are entertaining. They thrill us, scare us, and invite us to peek behind the veil of the unknown. But dig a little deeper, and you'll find that haunted places act as mirrors. They reflect our own fears, hopes, and curiosities. In Waverly Hills, we see the fragility of life and the desperation of human suffering. The hallways whisper not only of disease and death, but of resilience, compassion, and memory. In Hollywood Forever, the spirits of the dead remind us that legacy, fame, and memory are intertwined. Even in death, stories persist. In Savannah, the ghosts are vessels of history, carrying the cultural weight of centuries' tragedies and triumphs. Every haunted site we visited shares a common thread. They remind us that humans are storytellers. The ghosts may be real, imagined, or something in between, but the stories we tell about them reveal more about ourselves than about the spirits themselves. Psychologists often describe haunted places as locations where emotion, memory, and suggestion collide. The brain is wired to detect patterns and assign meaning. In old prisons, historic homes, or abandoned hospitals, our minds interpret every creak, shadow, and draft. But this is more than fear. It's empathy, imagination, and the need to connect. Haunted places tap into our collective consciousness. We are drawn to them because they hold the unknown, the unexplainable, and the emotional echoes of the past. They allow us to confront mortality safely, to reflect on loss and memory, and to explore the boundaries between reality and imagination. Haunted sites are also cultural touchstones. They shape holidays, inspire literature, influence films, and foster community traditions. Halloween itself is built on a fascination with ghosts and spirits, a celebration of liminality, the threshold between life and death. Visiting haunted places during this season, or listening to stories like these in the quiet of your room, allows us to participate in a centuries-old dialogue about fear, reverence, and curiosity. Take the Queen Mary, for instance. Its ghosts are not just remnants of tragedy. They're a cultural icon, a reminder of human ambition, war, and luxury. Similarly, Alcatraz is haunted not only by the memory of criminals, but by the legacy of human endurance, justice, and rebellion. Each site embodies the stories of its place and people, preserved in stone, timber, or legend. Perhaps the most profound lesson these haunted locations offer is this: ghosts are, above all, storytellers. They may whisper, flicker in shadows, or leave objects mysteriously moved. But their ultimate power lies in narrative. The ghosts of Eastern State remind us of punishment and redemption. Waverly Hills speaks of tragedy and sacrifice. Hollywood Forever and Savannah narrate fame, memory, and cultural identity. When we walk through these spaces, we participate in storytelling. We carry the tales forward, retelling them in our imaginations, to friends, or in podcasts like this one. In doing so, we honor memory, human, cultural, and emotional, ensuring that these stories continue to live. So as you prepare to drift off to sleep, remember this: haunted places are not just about fear. They are about presence, about history, about reflection. They teach us empathy, imagination, and connection across time. And in a season like Halloween, when the veil feels thinnest, they invite us to contemplate our own lives alongside those who came before. Listen for the whispers. Feel the chill of the air. Notice the shadows at the edge of vision, not with fear, but with curiosity. The dead, if they linger, are merely asking to be remembered, to share their stories, and perhaps to remind us that we are part of a continuum of life, memory, and meaning. Thank you for joining me tonight on this journey through America's haunted places. From the icy halls of Alcatraz to the moonlit streets of Savannah, we've walked together in shadows, explored legends, and glimpsed the stories that refuse to die. Whether you're a believer in ghosts or a curious listener exploring the unknown, I hope these tales have sparked reflection, fascination, and a sense of connection to history, culture, and the human experience. As you close your eyes, may the spirits we've met tonight rest easy, and may you dream not only of fear, but of the stories, memories, and lives that haunt the world around us, and perhaps the world within us. Sleep well, and remember, sometimes the past isn't gone. It simply waits quietly to be remembered.